Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Hello dear students, I hope you are doing well. Welcome to another video from our channel Easy Chemistry for All. This is Mr. Muad and I hope that you are all doing well. Before we start, please share and subscribe to the channel if you hadn't done so and help us reach our first 1000 subscriber. Share it with your friends so that they can hopefully benefit from these videos bi'idhnillah. Alright, so we are in our Inspired Chemistry series. We are in Module 6, Lesson 2, Ionic Bonds and Ionic Compounds. Okay, المركبات الأيونية والروابط الأيونية. So, after this lesson, you should be able to describe the formation of ionic bonds and the structure of ionic compounds. Okay, كيف إنه الرابطة الأيونية تتكون وبنية المركبات الأيونية. Generalize about the strength of ionic bonds based on the physical properties of ionic bonds. إنه تفهمون قوة الرابطة الأيونية وكيف تأثر على الخصائص الفيزيائية. And categorize ionic bond formation as exothermic or endothermic. Okay. Alright. So in the first part we will learn how to describe the formation of ionic compounds and write down the formula units of ionic compounds. So basically ionic compounds are made from a positive ion and a negative ion, right? So we'll learn how that happens, okay? Okay. So guys, this is sodium chloride, salt, yeah? So what are the ions in sodium chloride? So you should be able to remember because Na is in group 1 and Cl is in group 17. So Na plus and Cl minus, because we said group 1 has a charge of +1 and group 17 elements will make ions with a charge of -1. Write down the electron notation for Na and Na plus. Na has 11 electrons, guys. If you can do that and then come back to the video. So for Na, this is the electron notation, 11 electrons, and then it's going to lose this electron here, the one, lose it and then become a positive ion. Okay? Very good. So, for you to remember again, when we say cation, cation means a positive ion. An ion means a negative ion. Okay? Now, what's the ionic bond? اللي هي الرابطة الأيونية. It's a type of chemical bonds that results from the electrostatic attraction between positive cation and the negative anion. يعني هي قوة التجاذب ما بين الأيون الموجب والأيون السالب. تجاذب. Okay? This is the meaning of an ionic bond. You should also remember that ionic bonds happen between metals and non-metals. اللي هي ما بين الفلزات واللافلزات. Okay? And the metals are going to be positive ions. الفلزات تكون أيونات موجبة واللافلزات non-metals will make negative ions. Okay? And the valence electrons will be transferred from the metal, so it will lose electrons, to the non-metals, gain electrons. How does that happen? Do you see this blue electron? So it was actually here and it got transferred to Cl. And Na becomes positive and Cl becomes negative, as you can see here. So this is the compound NaF. The electron will be lost from Na, it will go to F. This one will become positive, this one will become negative, will be جاذب, and then an attraction will happen. Okay? And that's the ionic bond, guys. So the ionic bond, الرابطة الأيونية تتكون لما ينتقل إلكترون من فلز إلى لا فلز، يصبح موجب واللا فلز يصبح سالب، يحصل تجاذب, and that is the ionic bond. Okay, easy? Alright. This is just for you to remember where are the metals and the non-metals. Okay, so the red ones are metals, the blue ones are non-metals. Usually they will not give you this in the exam, but you should remember that the left part metals, this part non-metals. Okay. All right. So now let's go and look at how NaCl is formed. بنشوف المركب NaCl كيف يتكون من خلال صور مختلفة تعني نفس الشيء. So for example, you have a chemical reaction between Na and Cl. What will it produce? It will produce a positive ion and the negative ion. Why? Because this one will lose an electron and this one will gain an electron. وبالتالي هذا الشيء اللي قاعد يحصل. And energy will come out. So it's an exothermic reaction, يعني طارد للحرارة، يعني حرارة تطلق إلى الخارج. وبنشوف هاي واحنا ماشيين في الدرس إن شاء الله. Now if we look at the electron configurations, so this is the same thing but now we are looking at it from the electron configuration perspective. يعني بنشوف تكون مركب NaCl لكن باستخدام electron configurations. So this is the electron configuration of Na, this is the noble gas notation of Cl. So Na will lose this electron and Cl is going to get this electron. So what will happen is that the Na will become positive and the Cl will become negative. تمام? Now this is from the orbital notation perspective. Same thing. This is the orbital notation of Na. There is the electron in 3s. It will be transferred to the 3p in Cl. So this one will be lost. Can you see? So Na plus. And the Cl will gain this electron, the red arrow, and it will become Cl minus. So now it's happy because it has the octet state. Okay? Now, if we want to look at it from the electron dot structure, remember that Na has one valence electron. عندها valence electron واحد, صح? And Cl has 7, 2 and 5. So you draw 7 dots for Cl and 1 dot for Na. And this dot is going to go to Cl because Na will lose it. And the positive ion will be formed and now a negative ion is formed. والتجاذب اللي ما بينهم هو الرابطة الأيونية. Okay? And this is from the atomic models, يعني باستخدام النماذج الذرية. Meaning, it will show you a sodium atom, 11 protons, 11 electrons, chlorine atom, 17 protons, 17 electrons. So what will happen is that this one will lose an electron, this one will gain an electron. So تتذكرون كنا نقول لما الذرة تفقد إلكترون حجمها يصغر. So look at the size of the sodium. Now it's smaller. And when the atom gains an electron, the size will get bigger. Look at the chloride ion. Now it has 18 electrons and the size is bigger. Okay? So basically, just to recap, metal loses electrons. So it produces a cation. And non-metals will gain electrons to make anions. Negative ions, positive ions. Okay? As simple as that. Alright. Okay. So now that we learned how ionic bonds are formed and how NaCl is formed, now let's learn about the chemical formula, الصيغة الكيميائية. Okay? So the chemical formula is the way we communicate in chemistry. Okay? هي طريقة التواصل في الكيمياء. في علم الكيمياء يعني. Okay? It describes the molecule and the compound of the element. Okay? So you could name the compound from the chemical formula and write the chemical formula from the compound name. يعني يعطينا الصيغة الكيميائية ونكتب اسم المركب أو يعطيني اسم المركب ونكتب الصيغة الكيميائية. شو تفيدنا الصيغة الكيميائية؟ The chemical formula. The chemical formula tells us what are the elements in the compound, نوع العناصر في المركب, the number of atoms of each element, عدد ذرات كل عنصر, and the total number of atoms in the compound, العدد الكلي للذرات في المركب. For example, H2O is water, right? So for point number 1, the types of elements, we know that the elements are hydrogen and oxygen. صح? H and O. And I know that there are 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And the total number of atoms, عدد الكلي للذرات هو 3. Because 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. And this is a chemical formula. هاي صيغة كيميائية. So it helps us in doing so. Okay? Now, we are interested to know the chemical formula of ionic compounds. And it has a name. So the chemical formula of ionic compounds is called is called a formula unit. Okay? It represents the simplest ratio of ions involved. So these are the conditions أو خصائص الفورمula unit. Okay, for example, MgCl2. So if I take MgCl2, how many Mg's do I have? So 1. And Cl2, 1 to 2, 1 إلى 2. This is the simplest ratio. هذه أقل نسبة ما بين الذرات. ما في بينهم عامل مشترك عشان أقسم. صح؟ So 1 and 2, this is the simplest ratio. Okay? And also, the net charge of the formula unit should be 0. So the total charge in the formula unit should be 0. So when you add the charge of the positive ion and the charge of the negative ion, the answer should be 0. Okay? So for example, determine the charge of the ions that you have here. So you should know that lithium is in group 1. What will be the charges of elements in group 1? In group 1, the charge will be positive 1. So this is Li positive. And Cl is actually in group 17. What will be the charges of elements in group 17? It will be negative 1. Okay? So this is very important for you to know before we learn how to write the formula unit. Okay? So in order to make a compound between Li and Cl, you can just say Li and Cl. You always write the cation and then anion. دائما الأيون الموجب والأيون السالب في الكتابة من اليسار إلى اليمين. Okay? So what's the ratio here? النسبة ما بين الذرات 1 to 1. This is the simplest ratio. هذه أقل نسبة ما بين عدد الذرات اللي هي Li و Cl. What's the charge here? The total charge. Li has a charge of +1. صح? Plus Cl has a charge of -1. +1 plus -1 equals 0. And this is what we mean by the total charge is 0. So this is actually a formula unit. Okay? So now, what is the formula unit of the ionic compound made from Li and O? اللي هو lithium and oxygen. So let's come here. How can we write the formula unit or chemical formula? Li has 3 electrons, صح? So 1s2, 2s1. Oxygen has 8 electrons, 1s2, 2s2, 2p4. الحين على طول من هنا ممكن نعرف انه الليثيوم is in group 1 and oxygen is in group 16. How, mister? Because it has 1 valence electron. احنا قلنا if you have 1 valence electron, you are in group 1. And if you have 6 valence electrons, you are in group 16. الوحدة اللي طافت الدروس اللي فاتت. Okay? Here, oxygen has 6 valence electrons, so it's in group 16. Now, what will be the charge of group 1? Li positive. And what will be the charge of oxygen? It's going to be -2. Why? Because in group 16, the charge will be -2. Okay? So how can we make the compound, guys? You come here, you write Li plus 1, O -2. بعد المرات نكتب 1, بعد المرات ما نكتب. But I'm showing it here so that you will understand what I'm doing. So this plus 1 is going to go down here, and this 2 will go down here. Only the numbers. الأرقام فقط. الأرقام فقط وليس الإشارات. الإشارات نحذفها الحين خلاص. So Li2 and O1. We don't write 1 in chemistry, so it will be Li2O. Now, the ratio between Li and O, النسبة ما بين Li وال O هي 2 إلى 1. It's 2 to 1. This is the simplest ratio between the two elements or the two ions, okay? Also, let's look here. I have 2 Li and 1 O. What's the charge of Li? It's +1. So 2 times +1 plus, and how many oxygens do I have? I only have 1 oxygen and the charge is -2, right? So 2 ضرب +1 is +2, +2 plus -2 equals 0. So our formula is correct. Why? Because it has the simplest ratio and the net charge is 0. That's what we said here, guys. Okay? And this is how we write the formula units for ionic compounds. So what are the formula units or ionic compounds formed from these two atoms? So let's go to Ca and F. أول شيء نكتب الكتايون هني والانايون F. مستر كيف عرفت ان هذا كتايون؟ Because it's in group 2. So the charge will be +2. And F is in group 17, the charge will be -1. And then you take the 2, you put it down here, and the 1, you put it down here, and that will result in CaF2. Done. Finished. ليش ما في عامل مشترك ما بين الاثنين والواحد؟ This is the simplest ratio. So this method is very fast and it will help you write the formula quickly. Okay? Now, Na and N. So here's Na, here's nitrogen. Na is in group 1. Group 1 عندهم شحنة +1. So Na +1. N is in group 15. Group 15 has a charge of -3. So N -3. Take the numbers, put them down, then you will get Na3N. This is the formula unit. هذا هو المركب اللي يتكون ما بين sodium and nitrogen. The ratio here is 3 to 1. عندنا 3 ذرات صوديوم إلى ذرة واحدة من النيتروجين. Okay? Now you will say, why do we do this, mister? Why? Because now I have 3 sodium and I have 1 nitrogen, right? إذا جمعنا الشحنات الموجبة هنا كم بتعطيني؟ +3. والشحنة هاي -3. إذا جمعنا +3 و -3 بيعطيني كم؟ 0. اللي هي التوتال تشارج لازم تكون 0 في الفورمولا. عشان هيك هاي الحركة automatically solves this problem for you. Okay? Al and Ne. So Al is in group 13. Charge of group 13 is +3. And Ne is in group 18. What's the charge of group 18, guys? No charge. No charge. So no compound will be formed. ما بيتكون مركب. لماذا? Because Ne is already happy, guys. It has 8 valence electrons. It doesn't want to lose or gain electrons. So it's already happy. It's sleeping. So no reaction or no compound will be formed. Okay? Do you remember the octet rule? Alright. So now try this on your own. Mg and N. So again, Mg is in group 2, so the charge is +2. N is in group 15, charge is -3. Take the numbers, put them down. That will result on or in Mg3N2. So the ratio is 3 to 2. الراتيو ما بين الذرات 3 إلى 2. ما في أي. This is the simplest ratio. هذه هي أصغر ratio ما بين الذرات. Now I want to ask you a question. Try to write the formula unit between Mg and sulfur. So one of them has a charge of +2 and the other charge of -2. So again, put the numbers. So the answer will be Mg2S2. Now, is this the formula unit, the final one? No. The charge is 0, but this is not the lowest number of ions, guys. Because I have 2 here and the 2 here. فأقدر أقسم على 2 هني وأقسم على 2 هني لأنه في عامل مشترك. So the answer will be Mgs. Okay? Okay? Or for example, they might ask you questions in the exam. They will tell you okay. Imagine you have A has a charge of +4 and B has a charge of -2. Write the formula unit. So you take the 4, put it down, 2 you put it down, and then you have A2, B4. Don't choose this answer لأنه there is a ratio between A and B. The ratio is 2 to 4. This is not the lowest number. You need to divide this by 2 and this by 2 because there is a common factor, and then you will get 1 to 2. So this is A and this is B. So the correct answer is AB2. أو على طول تقسمهم من هني يعطيني AB2. This is what we mean by the simplest ratio. إلى الآن إحنا ما شفنا كل اللي سويناهم كان فيهم simplest ratio. ما في عامل مشترك عشان نقسم. But these are some examples of ones that you need to make the ratio simpler, okay, by dividing by the common factor. And this is how we write formula units, guys. So this is very important. هذا لازم تحفظوه. هو في الامتحان بيعطيكم الجروب، بيقول لكم العناصر في أي جروب، بس أنتوا لازم تكونوا عارفين إن الجروب كل جروب وشو شحنته. So that you can write them like this, exchange the numbers, and then write the formula. Okay? Alright. So that's the end of part 1. Now we'll start in part 2. Part 2 معظمه حفظ لأنه يتكلم عن الخصائص الفيزيائية للمركبات الأيونية, and it relates the physical properties of ionic compounds to their physical structure. Okay? So crystal lattice, الشبكة الكريستالية, 3D geometric arrangement of particles. هي بنية المركبات الأيونية، بنية المركبات الأيونية اللي هي ثلاثية الأبعاد. So this is how an ionic compound looks like in 3D. Okay? So this is the meaning of crystal lattice, شبكة كريستالية. Brittle. Brittle is a physical feature used to describe hard material that breaks easily without deformation. يعني brittle تشرح لنا خاصية المركبات الأيونية اللي لما إذا دقناها بمطرقة ما يكون فيها اعوجاج، تنكسر على طول. And this is the image that shows you brittle, and we'll come to that later. Okay? Melting point درجة الذوبان, you know this, and boiling point درجة الغليان, you also know this. Okay? All right. So what we are going to see here, we are going to see how the crystal lattice اللي هي الشبكة الأيونية أو الشبكة الكريستالية تتكون. Okay? So here you have magnets اللي هي مغناطيسات، كرات مغناطيس, where you have like this is an example of Na plus and Cl minus. Notice that the size of Na plus is smaller than Cl minus. Okay? And we know this because negative ions have bigger sizes than positive ions, especially if they are in the same period. Okay, so let's have a look here, okay, in what will happen in this video and how the crystal lattice is going to be formed. So the first thing is that ions will be attracted together, 2 ions, and then other ions will come. Okay, other ions will come, they will attraction between positive and negative, positive and negative, positive and negative. Okay, until we build something like a box or a 3D structure. Okay, so this is actually how it looks like in 3D. Okay, as you can see here. So that's the definition of a crystal lattice. It's the 3D geometric arrangement, okay, of particles اللي هو شفناه هني وشفناه في الفيديو. Okay, all right. Now this is very important for you to remember. هذا حفظ إنه melting point والboiling point درجة الذوبان ودرجة الغليان, and the hardness اللي هي صلابة والصلابة. okay, صلابة درجة غليان درجة ذوبان. إذا شفتوا في الكتاب بتلاقوا إحنا في قسم properties of ionic compounds. If you are studying from the book, you will see that we are in this section, properties of ionic compounds, because each lesson is divided into sections. Okay, so these are physical properties and they are determined by the strength of electrical forces between the particles of the matter. يعني كل ما كان قوة التجاذب ما بين الأيونات قوي كل ما زادت هاي الأشياء. Ionic bonds are relatively strong, so ionic crystals require a lot of energy to break. Thus the crystals have high melting and boiling points. Okay, because ionic bonds are strong, لأن التجاذب قوي، فعشان نذوب أو نغلي المركبات الأيونية لازم نعطيهم طاقة عالية جدا. And this is the melting point and the boiling point of some ionic compounds. So the higher the melting and boiling point, كلما زادت درجة ذوبان والغليان, the higher or the stronger the bond is. كل ما زادت درجة الذوبان والغليان كل ما كانت قوة الرابطة الأيونية أقوى. And this is what you see here. So for example الرابطة الأيونية في ال MgO أقوى من الرابطة الأيونية في ال NABR. ليش؟ لأن درجة غليانها ذوبانها وغليانها أعلى من ال NABR. Okay, so these are some questions that might come in the exam. Okay, they will give you the boiling and melting point and ask you which one has a stronger ionic bond. Okay, so the one with the higher melting and boiling points will have stronger ionic bonds. Now, ionic crystals are hard, rigid, and brittle. Remember the word brittle? So we are going to see what it means here. Solids due to the strong attraction between electrical charge that hold ions in place. So هاي الخصائص اللي هي hard, rigid, and brittle, صلبة جامدة وبريتل، هاي سببها قوة التجاذب القوية ما بين الأيونات الموجبة والسالبة. So brittle is shown in this figure. It shows how crystals break when a force strong enough to overcome these attractive forces applied. So هاي الايونيك كريستال شوف في تجاذب ما بين كل ايون موجب محاط بايونات سالب وكل ايون سالب محاط بايونات موجب. فاحنا لما نضرب بمطرقه او نحط قوه, so when we apply a force we move the particles from their places. So now look, what positive and positive are together and negative are together. فنزلت شوي هذا الجزء نزل تحت لما ضربته بالمطرقه, صح؟ So now what happens between positive and positive charges? تنافر. الشحنات المتشابهة يحصل بينها تنافر لذلك تتباعد, and that's why it breaks apart. عشان هيك تتكسر الكريستال. Okay, that's the meaning of brittle. Now they have the ability to conduct electricity, which is توصيل التيار الكهربائي. So conduct means توصيل, and this depends on freely moving charged particles. لما يكون عندك في المركب شحنات تتحرك بكل حرية, هذا المركب يقدر يوصل التيار الكهربائي. So in a solid form, في الحالة الصلبة, ions are locked in position. ما يتحركون, الأيونات ما يتحركون في الحالة الصلبة. Thus ionic solids are poor conductors. المركبات الأيونية الصلبة ما توصل التيار الكهربائي أو ضعيفة التوصيل. They are poor conductors of electricity. But if we put ionic compounds in a solution, like in water, or we melt them أو نذوبهم, الأيونات تتحرك بحرية. Ions are moving freely. So these compounds, they conduct electricity. So in the solid form, conducting electricity is very poor. In a solution or in the liquid state, conducting electricity is easy. Why? Because ions are free to move. لأنه الأيونات تتحرك بكل حرية. An ionic compound, هذا تعريف, an ionic compound whose aqueous solution conducts an electrical current is called electrolyte. يعني إذا عندي water, okay, and I put an ionic compound, وهذا الكومباوند, هذا الايونيك كومباوند يوصل التيار الكهربائي في electricity, هذا الايونيك كومباوند اسميه electrolyte. electrolyte هو مركب ايوني يوصل التيار الكهربائي عند اذابته في الماء. Okay, and this is what's mentioned in this definition. Right, guys? So try to solve these questions on your own. So the melting and boiling point of ionic compounds is high, guys. They have high melting and boiling points. The image here shows you which property of ionic compounds. لو تتذكرون هاي الرسمة كان عندها كلمة معينة. It was brittle. Yes, you're right. Ionic compounds can dissolve in water. نقدر نذوب المركبات الأيونية في الماء؟ If you forgot this, remember, can you dissolve salt in water؟ نقدر نذوب الملح في المي؟ Yeah, we can. So that is true. Dissolved ionic compounds اللي هي ذائبة في الماء can transmit electricity because of the free floating ions. فهذه في الحالة الصلبة، هذه in a solution. في الحالة الصلبة الأيونات ما تتحرك، لما نذوبها الأيونات تصير تتحرك بكل حرية فتوصل التيار الكهربائي. Okay? Alright. That's the end of part 2, guys. Okay? That's the end of part 2. Now we go to the last part of the lesson. And this part focuses on explaining the relationship between lattice energy and bond strength. طاقة الشبكة، لو تتذكرون الكريستال لاتس، طاقة الشبكة and قوة الرابطة. Also, it will tell us how we can determine how the ion charge or radius, ionic charge and ionic radius affects the lattice energy of ionic compounds. كيف إنه شحنة الأيونات وحجم الأيونات يؤثر على طاقة الشبكة أو الطاقة اللازمة لكسر الشبكة. Okay? So here's an activity, guys. I want you to focus here and try your best to answer this question. Which ion has the largest ionic radius? أي من الأيونات التالية عندها أكبر حجم or ionic radius? Remember from the last chapter? So the answer is K+. Yeah? Because when you go down, the size increases, and when you go to the left, the size will decrease. So K has the largest size. Very good. Now, look at these ions here, NO and S. Which one will have the smallest size, guys? The smallest size. Remember, من اليسار ليمين يقل الحجم. Decrease. من فوق لتحت يزيد الحجم. Increase. So you are right. The correct answer is O-. This is a revision, guys, okay? So now you know how ions, or you remember how ions' size changes, okay? Okay. Now I want to ask you the following. Which distance between two nuclei is the smallest? المسافة ما بين الذرات أو الأيونات. هل المسافة ما بين calcium and oxygen? So here's calcium, guys, and oxygen. Or beryllium, here's beryllium and oxygen. فإذا اعتبرنا إنه هاي الذرة اللي هني هي oxygen، أي واحدة من هذيلا بتكون Ca وأي واحدة بتكون Be. So as you can see, Ca has a bigger size than Be because it's down, right? So automatically, Be is here and Ca is here. So the size of ions determine the distance. يعني حجم الأيونات يحدد المسافة ما بين الأيونات. كل ما قل الحجم كل ما قلت المسافة، كل ما زاد الحجم كل ما زادت المسافة. So the distance between ions is affected by the size. If the size decreases, distance is low. If the size increases, distance is high. Okay? You are going to see why I told you that, because we are going to use it later. Okay? So guys, what do we mean by crystal lattice? We covered that before. Now bond strength اللي هي قوة الرابطة. It describes how atoms are bonded together in a chemical bond. تشرح أو توضح قوة الترابط ما بين الذرات في الرابطة الكيميائية. Now lattice energy اللي هي طاقة فصل الأيونات في الشبكة الأيونية. هي الطاقة اللازمة لفصل الأيونات في الشبكة الأيونية اللي هي هاي فوق. So it's the energy required to separate ions in an ionic compound. Okay? الطاقة اللازمة عشان أتغلب على التجاذب وأفصل الأيونات الموجبة والسالبة عن بعض. Okay? So the energy required to separate ions is called lattice energy. the strength of electrical forces holding ions is reflected by the lattice energy. So the bond strength and lattice energy are connected, مترابطين. كل ما زادت قوة الرابطة زادت lattice energy. ليش؟ لأنه احتاج طاقة أكبر عشان أفصل الأيونات. So the greater the lattice energy, the stronger the force of attraction. So high bond strength equals high lattice energy, and low bond strength equals low lattice energy. يعني كل ما كانت قوة الرابطة عالية كل ما أحتاج طاقة أكبر عشان أكسرها، وكل ما كانت قوة الرابطة ضعيفة كل ما أحتاج طاقة أقل عشان أفصل الأيونات عن بعض. Okay? From this slide, this is the most important part. Okay? I'm sure you studied this before, that reactions that absorb energy are called endothermic from inside. يعني absorb يمتص. And reactions that release energy اللي هي تطلق طاقة are exothermic. Okay? Now the formation of ionic compounds لما الأيونات الموجبة والسالبة تنجذب إلى بعض وتكون مركب أيوني, this reaction is always exothermic يعني طارد للحرارة. Okay? So true or false, guys? Read the question and then try to answer. Lattice energy is defined as the energy required to break down ionic bond in the crystal lattice. That's true. طاقة لازمة لفصل الأيونات أو كسر الرابطة الأيونية. Okay? Very good. So now, guys, we go and talk more about bond strength and lattice energy. Imagine if I tell you this. It is known that the ionic bonds in NaCl are stronger than the ionic bonds in KCl. What can you say about the lattice energy of NaCl compared to KCl? يعني إذا عرفنا أنه قوة الرابطة في NaCl أعلى, مين اللي بيكون عنده lattice energy أعلى? KCl or NaCl? We talked about it, right? So NaCl will have a higher lattice energy. And this is what we talked about, the relationship between lattice energy and bond strength. The stronger the bond, the higher the energy you need to break it, meaning higher lattice energy. The weaker the bond, the lower the energy you need to break it, meaning lower lattice energy. كلما زادت قوة الرابطة أحتاج طاقة أكبر لكسرها، كلما قلت قوة الرابطة أحتاج طاقة أقل لكسرها. As easy as that, guys, okay? So a strong ionic bond means high bond strength and high lattice energy, both of them. Okay? Very good. Okay, guys, I want you to think a little bit in this slide, okay? Remember these two questions? Imagine if the question does not give you strength, يعني did not give you this. How can you compare the lattice energy of two ionic compounds? Imagine the question directly tells you what can you say about the lattice energy of NaCl compared to KCl. مين عنده lattice energy أعلى ومين عنده lattice energy أقل. بدون ما يعطينا هاي الجملة. Without telling us which bond is stronger. How can you answer? So this is what we are going to learn. We need two things, guys. We need to use the ionic size and we need to use the ionic charge. It will tell us which one has a stronger bond and which one has a weaker bond. Okay? So, this is very important, guys. The distance between atoms defines the strength of the bond. المسافة ما بين الذرات أو الأيونات تحدد قوة الرابطة. If the distance decreases, يعني المسافة قلت ما بين الأيونات, the bond becomes, okay, if the distance decreases, the bond must or becomes stronger, and the smaller the atom size, the lower the distance, the stronger the bond. Remember at the first activity when we were drawing smaller ions and bigger ions, and I told you to compare the distance, المسافة ما بينهم. So كل ما قلت المسافة كل ما صغر حجم الأيون كل ما قلت المسافة كل ما زادت قوة الرابطة، والعكس صحيح. Okay? So now, using that, based on that, which ionic compound would have a higher bond strength or higher lattice energy? LiF or NaF? So here's the size of Li, here's the size of Na, and here's the size of F. So basically, if we make these two as F, one of them will be like this and the other will be like this. So which ion size is smaller, Li or Na? So this is Li and this is Na. مين المسافة ما بين الذرات أقل, LiF or NaF? LiF has a lower distance. And we said if you have smaller atom size, lower distance, it means stronger bond. So the one with the stronger bond or high bond strength is LiF. Why? Because Li is smaller than Na plus. That means the distance between Li and F minus is smaller than Na plus and F minus. Therefore, LiF bond is stronger and has a higher lattice energy. بما إنه الرابطة قوية أو أقوى عندها lattice energy أعلى. So this is the effect of ion size on lattice energy. Smaller ion size equals high lattice energy and high bond strength. كل ما قل حجم الأيون كل ما زادت قوة الرابطة كل ما زادت lattice energy. The smaller the size of the ion, the higher the bond strength becomes and the higher the lattice energy becomes as well. Alright? Now let's go and look at the ion charges. Look at the table below, guys. These are lattice energies for some ionic solids, okay? So if we want to make a compound between Li and F, هذه هي lattice energy. Between K and Cl, this is their lattice energy, and so on. What is the lattice energy of BeCl2? So go here, look at Be, look at Cl. So it is 3020, and these are the charges of Be and the charge of Cl. Now, what is the lattice energy of AlCl3? Here's Al, here's Cl, so 5492. لماذا or why is the lattice energy of AlCl3 bigger than BeCl2? Now we are not looking at the size. احنا ما نشوف الأحجام. احنا we are concerned with the ionic charges. Which one has more ionic charges أو شحنات أكبر? AlCl3 or BeCl2? This one has bigger charges. So basically, because AlCl3 has higher ionic charges equals stronger bond equals higher lattice energy. So if you have high ionic charges, that means higher bond strength, and that means higher lattice energy. كل ما زادت الشحنات أو كل ما زاد عدد الشحنات أو قيمة الشحنة، كل ما زادت قوة الرابطة كل ما زادت الطاقة اللازمة لكسر الشبكة اللي هي lattice energy. Okay guys? So based on what we studied so far, look at these two compounds, NaF and MgO. Which one has higher lattice energy and why? I will stop the video and you try on your own. Okay, so شو اللي يحدد higher lattice energy؟ احنا قلنا ion size أو distance between ions، المسافة ما بين الأيونات and the charges. So the answer is going to be MgO, guys. Reason one, because it has higher ionic charges. الشحنات في MgO أعلى من الشحنات في NaF. هني plus 1 وهني minus 1. هذا أول سبب. السبب الثاني، المسافة ما بين الأيونات here, distance between ions is lower than the distance here. اوكي احنا قلنا كلما قلت المسافة ما بين الذرات the lower the distance between ions the higher the lattice energy. Okay, so these are the two reasons, guys. Okay, now you try this question on your own and then come back. Okay, all right. Using the periodic table, which ionic compound has the highest lattice energy? So when you give you something like this, think about the size. You should choose the ones with the smallest size. يعني تاخذ الايونات اللي عندها اقل الاحجام. ليش؟ لانه حجم قليل معناها مسافة قليلة وبالتالي قوة رابطة اعلى and higher lattice energy. Okay? So now these are the positive ions and these are the negative ions. So which one has a smaller size, Mg or Sr? Of course Mg. And which one has smaller size, Br or F? F. So which one? It's going to be MgF2 اللي هي المركب المكون ما بين ال Mg وال F لأنه حجمهم أقل شيء. Okay guys? Because here the charges are the same, +2 and -1. الشحنات متساوية فما أقدر أفرق بينهم بناء على الشحنة. I cannot distinguish between them based on charge. So I need to use the size, okay? What about this one? Which ionic compound has the lowest lattice energy? So, biggest sizes. So look here guys, which one has the biggest size here? CS, right? And which one has the biggest size here? I. لأنه من فوق لتحت يزيد الحجم ومن اليسار لليمين يقل. وهاي الأيونات الموجبة وهاي الأيونات السالبة. So what is the compound between CS and I? CS. Okay? And that's the end of module 6 lesson 2 guys. It's a little bit dense, but you can just repeat it and hopefully, or repeat the parts that you didn't get and hopefully it will all make sense. If you have any questions, you know how to contact me guys. Thank you very much for your support for the channel. Again, please subscribe if you didn't, share it with your friends so that hopefully many can benefit. This is Mr. Muad and wish you all the best of luck guys. Take care.